Welcome back. We are going to dive into how to get rid of pride and ego and really go into how to work through those emotions, what they mean, how to become aware, how to accept where they come from, and how to let it move through us and not stick as part of our experience.
Great.
So stay tuned. If you haven't got a chance to watch the previous video about what pride is, I recommend really going back and reading that so that you can have an understanding of what the emotion pride is all about. Pride is really an interesting emotion, so different than the others because it's a positive and a negative trait all in one definition that we have. I love Eckhart Tolle and how he talks about the ego. And he says there's an ego that we have, and then we have a pain body. And the ego is just our humanness. It really is our humanness or our flawed part of who we are, I would say. It does do this comparing, does, that's what it does. It's kind of like as a child, I think that was maybe necessary, as we're figuring out the world. And so as we become an adult, we're trying to move past it. The pain body's more about the makeup of all the negative things that has happened. So if you can kind of distinguish those two, then you can kind of understand the ego. It's not built by the things that happen to us. We all have an ego.
Darn it.
Yeah, darn it. We all have an ego. But transcending that ego is where we find peace and happiness. So how do we become aware of pride within ourselves is something that we need to discuss, because that's the first step in moving through and letting the emotion move through us and move on, because we will experience both kinds of pride.
Yes.
That's kind of a big chunk. There's probably a few people that have ever existed on the earth that might not have ever felt pride, the negative pride, but we will experience that. The trick is to let that become aware so that it can process through and move on, and we can learn from it, because there is learning in our experience, good or bad. That's something that we think of as wholeness, right? That's wholeness. So becoming aware of pride is so important. When do we move in? How can we stop and say and recognize I'm in pride? Things that come up, it happens in a flash, doesn't it? You're driving down the road and you look at a house or you see somebody and there's a judgment. Usually there is a judgment.
Right.
And it can happen quick. Like, oh, I don't like that. Or
a comparison.
Or, oh, they have that and I do not.
Right.
And it happens in the blink of an eye. So to become aware of that feeling of pride, that there has been a judgment or a comparison. And the thing that's interesting with pride is either I'm going to judge myself as less than or myself as greater than. And that is where the ego speaks two words, I am better than or less than. Both are not true.
Right.
Both are not true. Both don't need a place to stay.
Right.
It comes in and we need to reprogram that and get it back out, because there's nothing good that can stay there if we take that on as truth within our body and in our soul.
And where is that need coming from?
Well, I think, I wish we had a way of, in 2 seconds, if we could, 2 seconds before we have that thought, I think there's a feeling of disregard for ourselves or insecurity that happens, and our mind looks for a way to make that okay, maybe pops in when we're comparing positively, ourselves as being better than. I think that really what happens is we're having a feeling that we're less than.
Right.
And then if you're feeling less than, I think that we're feeling, we haven't been trained or given the authority or the example to feel good about where we are at. So I think that's it comes from that lack within ourselves.
Yeah. And I think there's so much competition in our world. It's just, we're born in a competitive world and a competitive environment. And I think that contributes to it. Oh, and I have a story about that, actually. a confession. But I remember one time our kids were required to choose one instrument to learn. And so I had two daughters that chose the piano, and our older daughter had been practicing for years and was very good at the piano when our third child started. And so she was fumbling around, not very good on the piano. And, you know, here our oldest daughter could just soar through really difficult pieces. And I wanted to encourage our younger daughter because I could tell she had a gift. But anything is hard to learn from the beginning, you know. And so one day as she was practicing, I said, Sarah, do you know that if you keep practicing that hard, one day you're going to be even better than Chrissy? Thinking
You're such a good
that
mom.
would motivate her, just to help her have a vision. Like Chrissy was like you one day. You're going to get there.
Yeah.
And I will never forget, she stopped and looked at me and said, why would I want to be better than Chrissy? And I was so humbled in that moment as a parent that I had brought that pride into that relationship and into that gift, that I had brought in that comparison when there was no need for it.
And she knew. How old was she?
Yeah, she was probably 7.
Oh, goodness.
And so I was so humbled. But Sarah has actually been one of my greatest teachers about this, that she just accepts herself. She has no need to compare herself to others. She has no need to gain the approval of the world. She just is who she is, and she's completely content in that. And I think that's maybe the next step, you know, once we figure out, oh, this is coming from a need to be better or a need to be better than. What if you just stopped and said, I'm good enough just the way I am? What if you just could accept your gift and accept your greatness and accept who you are?
Yeah, Mr. Rogers used to say, I love you just the way you are.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And if we could get that into our own mind and allow ourselves to really be okay with being who we are, even in that moment, it's okay. I love myself just the way I am. How powerful that would be if that was an automatic response.
Absolutely.
So it's possible. I think it's possible.
Absolutely.
I think it's possible. So becoming aware that we're experiencing the emotion of pride, and then accepting. We have to accept it, because what happens too is then we go into the I'm not good enough. Oh, why do I always do that? I can't stand it. And then we're doing the same thing. We're bringing the ego into it. So we have to just accept, I am experiencing pride right now.
Yeah.
And as we do 2 of those steps, then we can do the final step, which was align with the truth.
Right. Absolutely.
And what is the truth when it comes to pride?
Well, I think the most powerful place, pride and ego really are a part of the mind experience. And we're trying to prove, and we're trying to validate, and we're trying to
It's a
justify.
formulation. Yeah, it's a formula. The brain likes formulas.
Yes. And if we allow ourselves to go from the mind down into the heart can only see through the eyes of compassion. The heart can only speak to you through truth. And so for me, the best way to disconnect from my pride is to disconnect from my mind and take that thought down into the heart. Like Sarah, in that situation, you know, if that were me thinking, oh, one day if I keep practicing, I'm going to be better than so-and-so. In my heart, that wouldn't be fulfilling.
Yeah, there's nothing good there. It's not fulfilling. Yeah, fulfilling is the best word. Yeah.
In my heart, I want to celebrate my sister's success, that she's so amazing and that she can inspire me. In my heart, I know that I can do great things. And whether I achieve my greatness and that is equal to or better than or less than my sister, it doesn't matter. I have achieved my greatness. And so, whatever thought you're having at this moment, if you just want to take a minute and think about something that you feel prideful about, when you connect to that thought, just notice how you feel holding on to that thought that's full of pride. And then bring that thought down into your heart. What does your heart want to do with that thought? And that person or that people that you're comparing yourself to, how does your heart see them? And just allow the compassion of the heart as you look at that person and honor what they've done, how that comparison melts. I hope this has helped you take a step out of your pride and really recognize pride is a choice. If you feel like, well, I'm prideful and I can never change that, that's not a truth. You can change that. And that change is going to come through the heart.
Essential oils can be helpful. If you find yourself stuck, oils like sandalwood and wintergreen and pepper are some that are specifically formulated to work on the feeling of pride. So if that supports you, then use your favorite oil to help shift the emotion. To learn more about all the emotions and how to let them work through you and not get stuck, then be sure to subscribe below, and each day we have a new emotion that will be headed your way with explanations and also experiences to help us shift out of those emotions.
Yeah. We believe in you, and we know that you are great just the way you are.
Yeah.
And we honor the good in you. We see the good in ourselves, and we see the good in you. And the world's going to be a better place if we can all step into that space of just loving and honoring each other.
For sure.
Have a great day. Namaste.